AI is getting mad spooky. Image generating AI can texture an entire 3D scene in Blender. I hate AI art. I hate it so much. The infuriating thing, and there are people in my chat who are like this, and I don't want to have this argument again, but there are a lot of people who don't really seem to understand how art is made. They don't understand, like, why good pieces of art are good. I think they would take a look at something culturally relevant and masterful. Like, I don't know if you go back a bit, like Blade Runner or like Back to the Future or whatever, and they think of it as a set of like distinct elements that could be done sort of procedurally with AI, you know, like, and then you just get some actors or whatever. I don't think people understand, like, there's no such thing as objectively better or worse art. We're kind of dealing within like an intersubjective framework. And as long as we're doing this within an intersubjective framework, you have to understand that people are going to value what humans can produce far more than this shit. I don't think they really get it. I don't know if they, like, let me put it this way. You know how there have been filters that you can use to turn any image into a pencil drawing for a long time now? They're pretty good too. Like for years, like before even the stable generation or whatever, you can take an image and it's just like, oh yeah, it's like I drew it, you know? And remember how for a very small, like very for a very short length of time, there were people talking about whether or not there'd be any value in using pencil drawings anymore because you could just take an image and tell me, did pencil drawings go away after that? Because nobody gives a shit. Nobody actually likes stuff made by AI except for an incredibly small niche group of virgins and losers, okay? Okay, wait, I'll try to be more charitable. Let me phrase this more charitably, okay? AI art can be cool in its own context. I don't mind AI art when I'm just looking at it in its own framework. The thing that bothers me is when people pretend that AI art is the same as a human making that art, even if the outcome is identical. There are people in chat that don't even seem to get this, which is really, really weird. Like, they don't seem to understand the difference between, like, a human doing something and a machine sort of like randomly number crunching its way towards an outcome. Oh god, are we doing the AI thing again? We're gonna keep having to do it as long as it's socially relevant. I genuinely don't. Then you're insane. I think you're insane if you feel that way personally. I've been reading Hideo Kojima's The Creative Gene. It's so refreshing because it's all about how art serves a genuine connection between humans. Yeah, it's communication, exactly. Literally, like, it's not about the outcome, always. Like, if you had a convo with an AI chatbot and you had a 5-minute convo and then you set it down and you never pick it back up again, if you had that same convo with a random human over Discord and then again never interacted with it again, I hope everyone would understand that there's a meaningful difference in the latter. The latter is better because you've interacted with an actual human as opposed to just like you can't reduce art to the pure experience of like consuming the empirical product in a contextless fashion because it's given meaning and emphasis by the weight that humans put into it, you know? Or let me put it another way. Remember how earlier in the in the stream we talked about how Christopher Lee had a little autism moment on the set of Lord of the Rings and talked about how his experience in World War II informed him on how a person would actually sound if they were stabbed in the back, you know? Imagine like an AI art generator making Lord of the Rings and then making that behind the scenes. Like, would that mean anything to you? Like, just computer crunching ones and zeros after being fed a bunch of behind the scenes info and some basic demographic info on the fake constructed humans that it used for its performance? You would just be reading ones and zeros sort of like splashed across a video. It wouldn't really mean anything apart from an algorithm found that humans like this. You can't tell stories about it. There's no narrative. Isn't one of the best parts of art being able to narrativize it? Like, isn't that what people like doing about TV shows? Like, season by season, episode by episode, you try to interpret meaning. You figure, like, it's given meaning beyond just what happens on screen. It's about an interplay, a communication, the behavior and the performance of actors, the interest and creative drive, the visionary directing. It goes beyond just what it is. It goes to the meaning of what's being said. I think everyone gets this on a fundamental level, right? Like, I think everyone understands this because if they didn't, they would believe there is literally no difference between like a real life and like a holodeck life where you don't actually interact with any other humans. I mean, it's a very lonely way of thinking, you know? Like, oh, well, in one life, I have a wife who I love, and in the other life, you know, I have an AI force field hologram construct. But both of them make me pancakes in the morning, so, you know, whatever, it's exactly the same. To me, that's a very weird, like, not weird, like, wrong, horrible way of thinking about things. No, Inchy Worm, it has nothing to do with consequentialism. The context added by human communication is a factor in the consequentialist assessment. Also, consequentialism is about ethical assessments, not about, like, the experiential value of art. What's the difference between randomly generated levels and AI generated levels? Because AI generated levels are doing so using systems that weren't constructed by humans, whereas randomly generated levels use procedural generation out like algorithms that are designed and tuned by humans. Humans have control over the random level generation and therefore can tween and construct them to give a set range of outcomes. The AI generated levels are just like you get a million permutations until something works. What happens when we get true AI that's actually sentient? If it's actually sentient, then it becomes communication again. This reminds me of the reaction kids have to The Matrix now. A lot of them are told the premise is Neo wants to find out what's real, and they respond, who cares? Keanu talks about it in an interview. Yeah, an additional point worth noting is that even in The Matrix, the other people you interact with are actually humans. That's another thing. The Matrix is not real in the sense that the environment is constructed, but you are interacting with other living things. The feelings that people in The Matrix have are as real, sincere as the feelings that one would have out in Zion or whatever. They're just in the box. The perception is warped, but they're not like AI bots or whatever. Wait, I don't think there's much of a difference, Vosh. The AI can be given parameters to operate in order to what is effectively the same as your description of randomly generated levels. Then it's not using the same kind of like AI that we're talking. AI has a million meanings. I'm talking about this shit where you just put like search terms into a box and then it like makes a million versions of the painting you're trying to steal until you find one that you like. If you're by AI, we mean any kind of algorithm, then like obviously there's a huge range. I'm just talking about communication. But AI art in the diffusion, like Google terms punched in version, that's not communication. I just don't believe it is. It is as much communicate like it's not. It's literally like here's some Google search terms, here's like the thing I'm yoinking. It's not, you're not meaningfully communicating your intent because you didn't really have intent in the construction of the image. You just pulled together, you synthesized info until you arrived at something. It's not a product of your individual like creative vision. Is it stealing when musicians use samples? Past a point, yeah, that can be stealing. But another important thing is that sampling in music doesn't obfuscate its original origin. For instance, if you have like an iconic song being sampled in a track, you can still refer to that. Context isn't destroyed. However, that's not the case with AI art generation. AI art people, those stable diffusion people, despise the artist they're stealing from. They make no effort whatsoever to attribute anything to them because they're social nitwits. They have no understanding of what they're doing. They have contempt for art and for artists. And the only reason their AIs work to begin with is because they have art to steal. People who sample tracks in their music, like actual other songs, tend to pull from that in like a respectful way, or at least like what they're pulling from. That's just not applicable here. AI making art assets is like having a factory make the food we eat. We don't care if you don't directly observe it. What? Eating food and consuming art aren't the same thing. Art is about experience and communication. Food is about getting a food. The context isn't what gives food meaning. It's satiation is and taste and stuff. Food's also about experience. Yeah, but not about communication. It can be depending on the context. Like, hey, don't meals taste better when they're made by someone who loves you? Right? But I don't think it's a fundamental part of it. You can get like value out of food that I think everyone can appreciate purely for like in its mechanical function. I mean, we literally need it to live. Now, I completely agree, DM. It freaks me out that there are so many people in chat who just do not understand this. Like, you guys would be if you ever lived in the world you think you want to exist in. Every piece of art that Stable Diffusion steals from to make its products wouldn't exist. If you deferred everything to AI art, there would be nothing. It would just be homogeneous gray blobs that get fed an infinite amount of data, but the data they're being fed isn't itself worthwhile because they're feeding off themselves. Like, you would be listening to AI art produced by feeding it AI art, which was produced by feeding it AI art, which was produced by feeding it AI art. There would be nothing. Nothing would mean anything. The only things that you would consume culturally would just be like gray goo. You would just have just an infinitely recursive blob of trending culture product moved through and forward. The only thing worthwhile here is the stuff that approximates human behavior, and the human behavior itself will always be the most valuable. So in to whatever extent AI art damages or destroys or threatens actual artistic production, that is an actual threat to like the fundamentals, you know? You have no clue how to generate AI models work. I know tech people believe that they can solve this fundamental problem. Like, you don't know the exact technology, bro, which proves the point. You know what I mean? Like, they think there's like a technical hook or like a workaround. Like, oh yeah, well, you don't know the exact details of this tech, so don't like enjoy the gray goo fucking culture apocalypse.